Know Thyself is dedicated to the exploration of the most rewarding task an individual can ever embark on, the journey to find oneself. Our intention is to investigate the universal principles that have equipped our species to seek the treasure of all treasures, self-knowledge. With your host, Daniel Powinski and Eduardo Manteca, this is the Know Thyself podcast. Okay. Good morning.
Good morning.
Welcome to the Know Thyself podcast. I'm Eduardo.
I'm Daniel.
And I just want to go ahead and say we're going to put a pause on Genesis and move right into the esoteric breakdown of a specific movie that Daniel and I have been talking about for quite some time. Daniel decided, hey, you know what? Let's go ahead and put a pause a little bit on Genesis and move right into this movie, since I think a couple of weeks ago we talked about how we would go back into breaking down some movies. And for this episode, we will do the breakdown of the movie 9.
Yes.
Which is a fantastic movie if you haven't seen it. Most people that I talk to about this movie either haven't heard of it or might have remembered seeing something about it, but it really went under the radar.
Right.
And there's just so much to unravel of this movie and so much that already has been done by others. But very exciting to know that at least in cinema and in modern day cinema, a movie like this has been created. But yeah, so we'll jump right into it. The movie was released September 9th, 2009.
Right,
so
9/9/09.
Yeah, I love that. It was produced by Tim Burton and it was directed by Shane Ackers.
Okay.
And gosh, I mean, the symbolisms in this movie, the symbols themselves in this movie are just like overwhelming and just left such an impression on me. So what we should do first is kind of start with the idea of what the movie, presents to the exoteric viewer. And, if you have seen it, you'll know that the movie is a representation of this sort of like post-apocalyptic world,
right?
Where machines took over and humanity no longer exists. And the movie begins with a doll, which are these stitch punks. I like the name that they've been coined. I saw that in a couple other places. But the dolls are the only thing that separates the machines from what's left of humanity. And I think that they do a wonderful job at sort of making an interpretation of each doll. Each doll has a number and they're known by their number. So we'll definitely get into the representation of each number and what it really signifies as far as, who's what in each character. But yeah, the movie has a premise where a scientist who created a life form that was able to then take over our planet, and it shows how it fails after he gives machinery basically a soul. I think his way to counterattack the war that goes on between the machines and humans is to take bits of his soul and this ability to imprint his soul onto these dolls, these stitch punks, there are 9 of these dolls. And the movie begins with the number 9. The number 9 doll awakens and finds himself in this post-apocalyptic world, and the movie starts from there. So
yeah,
that's like the premise. Spoiler alerts on some of the stuff that we're going to talk about, but highly recommend watching this movie. I've seen it a couple times already, and there's just so much into it. So let's go right into it, man.
Right. Yeah. No. And again, it's one of those movies that is an iceberg, and on the outside, it looks like it represents a certain agenda, but on the inside, it really represents something much, much deeper,
right,
like you were kind of alluding to. And I think the important thing about these machines that are going to be the antagonists in this story is they're not so much, they use the word humanity in the movie, but we know they're really talking about consciousness. These machines are trying to wipe out consciousness because, again, these rag dolls are an extension of this consciousness. Mm-hmm. And we're going to kind of see that process and see how the scientists sacrifice themselves to give life And there's so many esoteric allegories. And I know we want to kind of touch on some of the other stuff that's kind of been presented, like we were talking about, really great article on Vigilant Citizen, which will kind of talk about the time frame of what this is talking about. And it's going to be kind of on the Egyptian time frame,
right,
which is kind of unique because we were kind of looking at the Dravidian time frame. Again, all these cycles are connected, but there's different aspects that they kind of highlight. And so we'll kind of look at that aspect. But one thing that captures you very quickly in this film is it's like 120 minutes, right? The thing that kind of captures you is the characters and really what they represent. And in that short amount of time, you really get to understand these characters because they're very concrete images of certain archetypes. And so we're going to see, as we kind of meet these numbers and as we kind of progress through, we're going to see the expression of these archetypes. And what this film is looking at, because it's this post-Armageddon aspect, it's really looking at through the lens of the researcher and the occultist Aleister Crowley. It's really going to look at kind of the energies he felt were going to survive in this new world.
Right.
And so that's kind of an interesting aspect. We're kind of jumping to that, but again, right away, the wakening up of 9 is really important, and there's a lot of symbology to it, right? And so it's so interesting because when we find 9 after the intro, he's suspended by the string, and then that string breaks, and that's what falls, and he wakes to consciousness. So right there, we're seeing the fall into consciousness. And again, the whole aspect of speeding itself up. And, he falls, hits the ground, he awakes, puts himself up. And so what we're seeing is this time frame of our story being very condensed down into 1 second, 2 seconds. And again, this kind of slips by your consciousness, but this thing is becoming consciously aware of itself. And there's even the moment where it wiggles its fingers.
Right.
And this is something we talk a lot about in the natal chart readings that we've been doing for the counseling, because at one moment, you too wiggled your fingers and identified yourself as an individual aspect of consciousness.
Correct.
Right? You might not use that term, but you saw that you were different from your mother. Like you wiggled your fingers and your mother's fingers didn't wiggle. And it was like, that's like a hero dose times 10 when it comes to breakthroughs right there. We talk about this. We're not consciously aware of this. We don't remember this personally, but when we see this experience on screen, it's going to activate something inside you. So this whole movie is trying to activate something inside you because you went through this consciousness. You had the fall, you hit earth, you woke up, you kind of maneuvered your hands. And then immediately after that, he kind of starts to explore his environment. Right. And the first thing he encounters is the scientist who we don't
know. Voice.
What's that?
Who gives him the voice?
Who gives him his voice, right? Which goes back to the word, which really goes back to the story of John in the Bible, right? Which is really, really important. And that voice develops, right? He needs to kind of get it adjusted. But the aspect of seeing the scientist, and we don't really understand the scientist role at this point in the film, but he sees death. So not only have we had this relationship and this experience, and we're observing this experience of something becoming consciously aware of himself after the fall, we also see that immediate understanding that I'm finite. And that that's another hero dosage of, almost like a psychedelic aspect that happened to us, or a transcendental aspect that happened to us that, again, we're not consciously aware of, but it had a formation on who we are, right? And that's exactly what we're going to see kind of grow out of this, but how he approaches this, and we're going to follow 9's story because he's really the hero on this hero's journey. And we're really going to kind of find his story, but there's this aspect of it's his attributes, it's how he handles these situations that's going to make him the hero. And he went through the same experiences we went through.
Right.
And so they're trying to allude something to you. Like, it's about your relationship to these experiences. And we're going to see certain dolls that live in fear. We're going to see certain dolls that want to keep their head in the sand. And he's going to be a little bit different with a few other ones. But this is not just for development in this physical world. This is actually going to show survival in this physical world. And that's what's so interesting about this, because there's certain attributes that the director through the influence of probably Crowley and the discussion between the transition between the age of Osiris and Horus, which we're kind of talking about, where he identified certain attributes are going to be needed to create the new world and to survive the transition of the old world. And so it's not even just, I mean, it is about self-development and self-growth and unfoldment, but he's saying that this is absolutely needed if you're going to survive this transitionary period of the beast, which is what they call the machine. The machine,
yeah. And then I like to go back what you said about the movie being just like so short and so condensed. Major questions that we ask ourselves throughout time are asked by the doll along the way. You know, he's like, "Are we alone?" He's like, "Oh, you'll never be alone." He's like, "You're never alone." And then they just move on to the next scene. You know what I mean? Like they just drop this on you so quickly, but it's all the same questions that we ask along the way, and what we probably will be asking for the rest of eternity. Every time there's a new cycle that comes in, and tries to lure us away from progress and becoming a humble society again, is that fear comes first, the questions come right after, but the answers are all there. And I like how they just do that with the characters that are helping Nine as he's sort of like stumbling into this world.
Right. And we're really seeing the completion because they all play a part of what you're going to need. Right. And I think that's really important. And even in the intro, even in the intro from the media company, it's Relativity Media, and it's like this epic intro, and it like takes you through the universe. But even when they're introducing the story, you see the scientist, cutting the cloth made from the same cloth. So there's biblical significance there, and the idea of stringing through a needle's eye, and the aspect of that's the way of truth, and that's why you can't walk a camel through a needle's eye. Like you can't take materialism with you. Only truth, grace, and virtue is what gets you through to that other side. And so there's all this significance, and it's in the creator, who's the scientist, also is talking about how knowledge and technology was used to their own damnation.
Right.
Great snapshot of maybe the situation that we might be in, where Manly P. Holbrook, I love how he always addressed it. He said, knowledge will give you the information how to build a bomb. Wisdom will decide if you need to build the bomb or not. Right. And that's what we're kind of seeing, this technological society. And as we kind of get introduced to what this world was prior to this post-apocalypse, it was this very tech-centered, science-based, but more of the religion of scientism, not the scientific method.
Right.
But that was kind of their damnation. They kind of lost the source of what life was. And they started building machines to fight their enemies, and then the machines turned on themselves. And we're even going to have self-reproducing machines. So the machines are going to be made in their image, just like these dolls were made in the image of the scientist. You know what I mean? And even like the color of green, that's going to come up with the creator. That's going to be an ode to the Emerald Tablet. Right. When he moves that piece that we're going to kind of look at that connects everything, that gets inverted, and it's kind of the image that even our main character picks up in the beginning, and he carries it with him, and he doesn't know what it is.
Right.
But that's going to have huge significance. Like we don't even know as in the beginning what this piece is that kind of can invert the machine and the whole aspect. But just to kind of look again, I mean, I just wanted to, that fall from slumber and the aspect of sleeping and then waking up into consciousness is just really going to be this really important part, because this is, again, significance of that first time that you met yourself. And this meeting is going to happen again and again throughout your life as you connect with more aspects of yourself.
Right.
And so it's just such an important process to see played out on screen. And it's 5 seconds long. And you really have to, when we're watching these movies for these esoteric significance, you really have to, it's in the moments away from the dialogue sometimes that really, really deep information is kind of being presented to us. So, just that idea of meeting yourself, and that this was a new thing kind of for you. And it was an aspect that you were a part of. But as we go through the spiritual development, as we go through all this unfoldment, we're constantly meeting more aspects of ourselves. You know, we've been talking about it a lot. We had that conversation when we were on Animus together. You know, Jung's philosophy is you are born whole and you have to collect all those pieces,
Right.
rather than your personality being born by experience and experience. And this is kind of what this is alluding to. You know,
Right.
you have to meet all the aspects of yourself. And, you know, what was your initial reaction the first time you met yourself? And it was kind of like what 9 is presenting to us. And so he kind of goes out, right? Because he has to leave that place he's in, and he sees somebody, right? That he sees what's going to be number 2. Right. And he sees 2 in the distance. And that's, what was your take on 2? Because it's a really, really big character.
Yeah. I mean, I think 2, you know, holds, as Daniel was saying about, you know, collecting all the aspects of yourself in the movie. And as we like break down the characters, you'll see that for yourself. But how they introduce each one and the timeline of each one has a specific purpose for it. And as he stumbles into the world, you know, 9 being, you know, the enlightened one, the one who's going to be asking the questions, the one who doesn't know why he's here or what comes next, the first person to sort of communicate with him is this sort of internal ancient wisdom that he feels comforted by. And immediately that wisdom tells him, hey, I'm a friend, you know, because he doesn't know how to perceive number 2. But number 2 is very quick and very much calm in the situation to sort of tell him like, hey, you know, like he's the one who tells what I just said earlier. He's the one who says to him, when 9 asks, are we alone? He says, you're never alone. So he says just the smallest of things to him to comfort his world by saying like, hey, you know, you are in this rubble and this sort of chaos, but like, it's going to be okay.
Right.
And 2 does a good job at sort of making sure that 9 is protected first,
right,
before the beast comes and takes 2 away.
The sacrifice.
So that's the first of the sacrifices that you'll see in this movie. And that now starts the journey for 9 to go back and save 2, because in that moment he understands selflessness. He understands the sacrifice that just happened. He's like, you know, we were both together for a minute. You're kind of downloading this information into me, but then just as quick as I met you, you're now been taken away. Right. And so now I must go on a journey to retrieve you, to get you back. Right. And that's sort of 9's first mode of like purpose or of just, you know, taking on this task of bringing back 2.
Right. And you know, what's great about this movie too, and I think everybody who's got that kind of esoteric keen eye, is 2's going to be the representation of the Divine Mother. Right. And so this is what's really cool about this movie. And I love that. I think this is again why maybe it got slipped under the mat, but you know, usually the Divine Mother is played by a feminine, but we're going to kind of see the hero in this movie that kind of comes in to save the day through action is going to be played by a female. So we have this, we're now seeing that the sex does not have to be the register of the archetypal image. It really has no matter of who is. The archetypal mother can be played by a male character because it's the energy that it's bringing, right? And then how perfect is that your archetypal mother, and it was his first friend. Who is your first friend? It's your mother. Right. So again, it's this representation, and then this journey to save 2 now becomes this journey to save the sacred feminine. And that's where this journey is going to come from. And that's why that, again, 2 doesn't have to say much, but it's just his presence that can calm him. It's those simple words. It's not a lecture. 2's not giving a lecture. It's his presence. So again, it's that motherly, nurturing energy that teaches, which is the first teacher of the individual, and how important it is that he met 2 first, and he doesn't meet 1 first, who we're going to meet later, who's a complete opposite of this sacred feminine energy. And it's really going to be this aggressive, inverted divine masculine when it kind of makes its way. But yeah, it's just a great example. I love how they're going to use, you know, the various of the expression of sexes in the material to represent these archetypal images of what this truly is. So maybe we can help it will help people kind of disconnect of the image of the archetypal mother always having to be played by a female.
Female, yeah.
Right. And so he is.
Well, just really quick,
Yeah.
the archetypal female, it's always played by that mother energy, or sorry, the other way around. The mother energy that's always portrayed by the female is often known, and it happens a lot with the way he touches 9, number 2, by the elderly. So every time that you meet, if you watch the movie closely, number 2 carries himself with both energies, male and female, and it's always been accepted, in my opinion, in society, that when an elderly person, especially a male, like physical male, takes on both energies at the same time as he approaches physical death, there's a comfort about that. We all know that about the grandfather, who is not necessarily one or the other as far as the essence of a male or female. And that's what you'll see in that whole scene with number 2. It's like how he puts his hand on his shoulder, how he sort of like tells him with a gentle voice, like, it's okay, you're going to be okay. So, I absolutely agree that's what's really going on there. But that's something that, again, you can see within the elderly community, especially if you meet, an elderly man. You're just like, oh, you're not really, portraying the aspects of your masculine side as much as you are more now with the more of a female, more of a gentle, more of a caring, nurturing energy. So, right. But yeah, moving on.
No, that's perfect, man. And you're exactly right. And again, it's amazing how 2 has such a small role in this film when it comes to screen time, but plays such a huge significance. And it's that driving factor that's going to immolate kind of the whole story and carry the whole story through. And so 9, we kind of find in this spot is kind of beaten because the beast has come. And so the beast came and took away 2 sacrifices himself. So 9 can get away. And we kind of see 9 barely making his way, and he's going to be recovered by another character we're going to meet, which is 5.
Right.
And 5's going to kind of be seeing him through the telescope. And again, we're going to be introduced with a lot of other things here. We're going to see more of this one-eye symbolism, right? Because 5 is going to be you losing his left eye. And we're going to see what that actually represents, because he does 5 is going to be, although very caring, lacks courage, is very fearful. And it's that losing that left side, that masculine aspect, where most of the monsters and the beast in this story, they too have one eye.
Yep.
But a lot of times they're missing the right eye, or if the right eye is intact, it's glowing red.
Right.
But the idea that there's no sacred feminine present in this world, it's all this really aggressive, inverted masculine energy, and it's a dominator feel. And that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to stamp out that divine feminine. And again, it's what the whole story is. That's why the whole journey is to save that female. That's why the female gets kidnapped. And we've seen this before.
Right.
But again, the female doesn't have to be played by that esoteric feminine energy, doesn't have to be played by a female. It's played by a male in this role, and it's really important. And so he gets saved, and he's kind of patching up 9, and then 9 is going to encounter 1 and 8. And 1 is definitely the more powerful character here, and he's really going to represent exoteric religion, really the kind of target Catholicism in here, but also institutions. Institutions
backed by muscle, which is 8.
Which is 8, and 8's going to be that brute order follower.
Right.
You know what I mean? Who doesn't really, as long as you tell them what to do, they're fine with it. And yeah, number 1's really going to be based off of fear. Not only is number 1 because he was the first doll, he's the writer of history, but he's also the director of thought. And he knows if he can control the thoughts, he can control the actions. And just like that institution the Catholic Church did for a very long time, they controlled both of those. They controlled the history of the world, and they also controlled the direction of thought.
Right.
And so, it's always this fear-based aspect, and he's also the only one that dolls himself up with things. Like he has a penny on his hat. Like it shows kind of the materialistic side of the Catholic Church,
and the power. I mean, he's got the staff, he's got the cape, he's got the he looks like the Pope, obviously.
Right.
When you look at him,
it's very direct.
Yeah, they very laid it out, very, very point, to the point. And immediately he has this quarrel with 9, as 9 is the as he's enlightened into this world, he's asking all the right questions, but he's asking the wrong person, and that causes fear and discomfort within 1. 1 is just immediately shutting 9 down. He's like, look, this is how it is, this is how it's always been, and this is how it's always going to be, so mind yourself. And 9 doesn't accept that right away, so then they go even further to want to show 9, look, this is what happened when people turn on themselves, and this is what happens when the world goes dark. Right. So here we are, and I saved all of us dolls by not having to go inquiring about all the things you're inquiring about, but more so like keeping you suppressed from information that doesn't need to be asked about, because look where it got us. Right. And 9 still doesn't accept. He says, that's just not really, what's really going on here. There's something more going on here. And that he's alluding to on the more specific matter is, let's go ahead and get 2 again. Like, why was 2 out and about on his own? If you're protecting all of them or all of us, why would you let him go on his own? Which is the scene where now 5 is the one-eyed individual that we were talking about, doesn't even know that. He doesn't know, 2 was, he said, you saw 2 out there, and he says, yeah, I saw 2 out there. He was taken by the beast. And immediately 1 says, that's it. He's a goner then. Mm-hmm. We don't need to go for him. We don't need to rescue him. Like, he made his choice, and that's where it's at. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot that happens in that whole moment between the power struggle, the curiosity from 5, and the butting of heads between 9 and 1.
Right. So yeah, no, absolutely, man. That's so true, because you're right. 5 is unaware that, and he's like, why is 2? Because again, he's like, he's not the deepest, and he's a little bit afraid, but he's like, why was 2 out there alone? Like, we don't travel alone. And we're going to find out that that's going to be kind of something that 1 kind of does. But I love how you talked about how he controls the knowledge and even controls the information. Like, I tell them what they need to know. Right. And this is, again, a great, and this is what was Crowley's biggest problem with the Catholic Church. And this is what all esoteric people's, right. Other than the actions, what they did with, the massacre and all the terrible things that the Catholic Church is responsible for. But the biggest thing is the amount of information that they have pulled out of circulation. Under the Vatican, there's libraries miles and miles long of occulted books that they pulled out of circulation. When everybody was talking about storming Area 51, I was like, why Area 51? Let's storm the Vatican Library. Yeah, seriously. That's really where it's going to be. That's what's going to be able to connect us to those, if there is, extraterrestrial life out there, or interdimensional life, whatever your perspective is on that. But there's the keeping of information. Mm-hmm. And so, again, and it's going to be so interesting, because we're going to see a sting of what happens when 9 by accidentally does something that he doesn't understand. And we're going to see, so it's almost like 1's point is made, but it's not. You have to learn from your mistakes, and we're going to kind of learn that through this. But yeah, fearful, dogmatic, very closed-minded. And, we're going to have some great quotes about fear in this film. But 1's quote on fear, so where 1 stands with fear. He says, sometimes fear is the appropriate response. And that's just so perfect of his philosophy. And right. He rules by fear, because the only way he can stay in power is because of 8, which is by far the biggest, massive. And he's just, again, he's an order follower. There's no moral compass within himself. It's whatever upstairs tells him what to do, he does. Even to the appointment where he's like, he repeats exactly what 1 says. 1's like, I told you so. And he's like sharpening his knife. He's like, he told you so. Like, it's just, monkey see, monkey do kind of situation. And he's a simple individual. Yeah. Later on in life, later on in the story, we see that he likes to sneak away and put a magnet on his head. So we have this like lower consciousness, like not looking for the deeper answers kind of in things. And really kind of what Aleister Crowley was kind of talking about in this transition period about the population. How he was talking about in 1904 is when Crowley really saw this age of Osiris switching to this age of Horus. And he says in that transition page, because we're getting the ability for what he calls the Godhead passed down to us,
Right.
to the individual, so they can have their own self-development and climb that own ladder. He talks about how we're in a very much infant stage. It's like a reset, and we come into an infant stage. And again, these are Crowley's words. These are not know thyself, but he addresses the aspect of, this is why this century, you guys are going to watch boys play games, and it's going to change whole nation, and the whole world's going to be toned down to it. He's going to be like, he said, this is why you guys are going to adopt ideas like communism and fascism and materialism, because you're babies. Right. Again, not my words, but this is how Crowley kind of viewed this age. He was just like, you're going to all keep putting magnets on your head, and you're going to be all addicted to drugs, and even occultism is going to be a watered down version of not really truly what it is. And this is kind of represented really strongly through 8. And I think he's so big because he represents a majority of the population. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Like the size of the individuals kind of
and
indicates
he's the only one that's
huge, huge, right? And again, I think that size is in accordance to the population, because it is kind of a lot of not so much brutes, but it's just, that's what it was kind of signifying. Like the population's majority going to be these individuals that don't really think deeply about this.
Yeah. Simple-minded, but with the right persuasion, maybe redirected at some point in time.
Right, because I mean,
he doesn't show like complete evil or complete ignorance of the possibility of something beyond what he's been told. You know what I mean? And
he's just had such a limited box that he's grown up. So it's exactly. It's like, we have at my parents' house, they have this tortoise, and it was in the front yard, and it was a certain size, and then it got a little bit bigger because it's an African tortoise that they adopted. And it got a little too big for the front yard, and they moved it into the backyard. And the thing is like tripled in size, I swear, in like 2 weeks, because you grow to the box that you get put into.
Right.
You know what I mean? And this is a great expression of kind of the capacity of what 8 is. He's been put in this little box, but even, again, you said that there's goodness there, because he does protect one, and he protects the other ones when the beast comes. Like, he stands in front of them, he holds his knife, he knows his role.
Yeah.
So he's got that Mars warrior energy. It's just not directed in quite the right space at this point. But there is goodness in him. You can kind of see it. And so, we're talking about all these other characters, and we're going to kind of introduce some more characters, but 9, we really haven't kind of looked into the aspect that 9 really is going to, one, he represents the fool's journey in the beginning, right? And we kind of see that whole journey of the fool to the hero and getting the world card at the end. But he's also, he's young, he's adventurous, he's courageous.
He's Frodo.
And it is Frodo, which is so funny. It's Gandalf. It is Frodo. And what is it? Elijah Wood?
Elijah Wood.
Yeah, and great voice for it too. You know what I mean? It was great voice, but again, those characters, those individuals that represent that archetype get cast into those roles because they're just a perfect explanation of that archetype, So we have another hero's journey for Elijah Wood, and he's really going to be the represent of Prometheus and Lucifer, and this is very much based on a Luciferian perspective. And so again, we've kind of presented, there's Luciferian perspectives, the esoteric schools, there's Masonic interpretations. Those are very connected as well. There's Gnostic. There's so many kind of different perspectives within this, but it's good to know that this is kind of a Luciferian perspective on what the end of the world is going to look like. And what's the one thing that 9 brings with him the whole time is that little lighted torch.
Yep.
Really talking about how Prometheus took the fire from the gods to share to humanity. And it's really, this idea that the mystery schools really looked at Lucifer as, passing on that divine knowledge, and that idea that, you don't wait for a miracle. You have to approach divinity yourself, and it's through your own free will decisions that you are going to unfold the path to the eternal.
Right.
Right. It's not going to be just like this mass awakening that's going to kind of come upon us. And, you really kind of have to take responsibility for this. And we're going to see that. We're going to see that courage that kind of comes from it. And this is one of the traits that's going to be that this director and Crowley thought was going to be so important to not only survive the old world and live through this transition, but to be part of the new world.
Right.
But there's no going back. And that was another thing that 9's going to say to 5 when they go on this journey to find 2. They lose the map.
Right.
And 5's like, we should go back. He's like, we can't go back. And what they're signifying there is just like, no, the old world is dead.
Yeah.
Like, we can't go back. Even if you tried to go back into this old world, we can't live there. We have to continue this journey. And again, he's going to be really the inspiration, and he kind of has that even Jupiter feel to him throughout it. Again, we see some very cool, very interesting, astrological archetypes with like number 1 kind of almost representing like Capricorn and rule following. 8th is kind of like this Aries, but it's not directed in the right spot. So we have this inversion. And then like 5 almost has like this Virgo kind of analytical energy. So they all kind of bring certain skills, and they're bringing the whole story together.
Right.
And it's not that one astrological energy is going to survive over the other in this new world. It's how well you're expressing that astrological energy from what outlet, because even one, Capricorns, definitely can transcend this and kind of transcend beyond this idea of where we kind of see 1, because he's very much like kind of an inversion of that.
Right.
And so they're kind of going on this journey. They use we enter the tunnel, right? They go in this tunnel because they're following the footsteps of the beast. And we have this whole entering into the subconscious, entering into the shadow realm, right? And 5's afraid.
Right.
And what's the quote that 5 said? What 5 says to 9, which is like the best quote in the whole.
Well, 9 encourages them to go down the path, and 5 is hesitant, and he says, "You're just like 2. You can't remember how to." No, he says you can't. You don't remember
how to be afraid.
You
or
don't
something?
remember how to be afraid. Yeah,
you forget to remember to be afraid.
That's what it is.
You forget to remember
how to be afraid.
One of the greatest quotes that's just completely slipped by so many people. And this is so important. And this is going to be something really important that we're going to see, especially when we look into Dune, when we think about Lord of the Rings. Mm-hmm. To survive through this transition, you have to approach fear as this aspect of an indicator of something you need to rise above. And we have to rise above our fears. Fears cannot be guided by those decisions. It's going to murk up the water. Fear is the mind killer, is what we're going to learn in Dune, right? And that's exactly what 9's going to embrace. And he's just like, and again, he just turns on his light, which is so important, because we've talked about this so far. How are you going to survive the dark winter coming? You have to turn your light on. Exactly. This is the only way we're going to circumvent and really move through this map and kind of find what it is we're looking for. And so they go on this journey through this tunnel, which we know represents the subconscious.
Right.
And what do you find at the end of your subconscious is a monster, because you haven't incorporated it yet. And we talk about that with the shadow self, and even the aspect that there's tracks to the tunnel of the monster. Right. So you can actually see the traces. You don't know where it is, and you don't know what causes it, but I have to follow that down. This is talking about going into the subconscious. So 9's really going to kind of purify himself. They go to rescue 2. They kind of get caught. The beast is all mad. It looks like it's going to be the serious situation. And then we meet the most badass character of the film, and that's 7. And she's going to come save the day.
The only female character.
Is
the warrior.
Is the warrior.
Yeah.
Again, this is a perfect explanation of how the physical sex does not have to represent the archetypal energy that it's presenting, because she is the most masculine out of all of them. And she's got the determination, and she's got, again, a lot of courage and skill. 9's going to kind of use his mind later on to save 7, which is so interesting, because 7 always kind of is saving him in the beginning. But still, when it comes to like the body and being in the body, nobody's more control of their body than 7 is. Mm-hmm. Complete body control. It's like you would say it's like their sun and their Mercury is like in the 6th house. Like there's a really good connection between the psyche and the body. Really great control there. And it's really, she's going to represent this really unique character, because she's courage. We find now that not everybody bought one's bullshit, and actually it was just 5 and 2, and later we're going to meet 6. But 7 is going to show that, no, there's been a resistance to 1 the whole time.
Right.
And this kind of is like when you find out about the occult and you find out about mystery schools, and you're like, oh my gosh, there's been a counter to this, especially light mystery schools. But there's been a counter to this kind of this negative, dark energy I see in the external.
Right.
And there's actually forces working against. It's like finding out about the buddy, but she also represents kind of like that trinity, because she also is going to be, even though she's this strong character that can stand on their own, is going to kind of represent the romantic and the connective aspect of 9.
Right.
And so we have kind of a lot of stuff there. But what do you think? What was 7? Your impressions with 7 when you first kind of?
No, I think you nailed it. I mean, obviously every scene that's cut. I mean, for me, it's hard not to look at every scene the way I look at every scene, just because of all the editing that I end up doing. So I'm constantly just like this scene, this scene, and everything is there for a reason. But, of course, immediately you find out that 9 understands the opposite sex immediately. Like immediately he's swooned by her. The eyes that they draw on him or computer animate on him are just immediately fixated on her.
Right.
Her courage, her approach to a situation that all 3 males are completely paralyzed by and fearful of for their lives. She comes and sort of, as you already mentioned, rescues all of them from this imminent doom. But there's also I really like how fluid she is, and she wears the mask of a crow, I believe.
Right.
And that's just like, the symbolism there. And like, I like that you talk about, I don't know if we should put a pause on this for a second and talk about Huxley, but you were talking about this era, and we're talking about the era. We talked about the Yugas, we talked about Kali Yuga, and what he mostly alludes to with the Egyptian occult. He puts a lot of these symbols into the movie. So I don't know if you wanted to bring that up about how this is sort of this era. We talked about the era of the Kali Yuga and the years that will be towards the end of humanity in a way, to start over again, to purge all the things that we've done wrong. And in this movie, it's like a 2,000-year period, right, that they're alluding to, which is the era of Horus.
Yeah, and so that's perfect. And so the Egyptian calendar, through Crowley's calculations, shifted from the age of Osiris to the age of Horus in 1904. And it is this kind of this transition period. And it is very connected to the Kali Yuga period, because that transition from the end of this age to the beginning of the Golden Age was in the 1930s. So again, it's like, well, it's 30 years off, but we're talking about galactic calendars here. Mm-hmm. 30 years isn't even a blink in these kind of calculators. So,
and they even put it with the imagery. If you notice, like nothing is so much modern more than like, I think, up until like the 30s or the 40s. Nothing in this post-apocalyptic world.
Exactly. Like you're right. It's kind of like if World War II would have went a little different ways.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's a good point, man, because that's exactly what it is. Even like the style of the clothes and the cars that we're seeing, that's so true. It's really kind of putting a pinpoint on that time zone. And again, that's, the idea of even fighting wars, he said, is a child's thing. And so you almost have these like adult children at that time, because 1904 is going to be, by the time we're in the 30s, now all these adult man children. I'm not saying that generation was adult man child, but within this storyline,
right,
and with Crowley's thing, this is why maybe something like that could have happened. Again, not calling anybody from that generation a man child, because they had to face fear for sure. Yeah, it's just this interesting aspect of kind of what 7's representing and how unique it is. And again, it's what I really was attracted to this story, because 7 really pulls you in, and it's like that Trinity, powerful, sacred, feminine warrior, who also has empathy. It's not like it's this, like Michelle Rodriguez, who always plays like that really tough girl, but doesn't really have that empathy side to her. It's like a really masculine. It's kind of like not so far that way. It's not all masculine. It's just like beautiful marrying.
I don't know who Michelle Rodriguez is.
Paul Rodriguez's sister. She's always in all of his movies. No? Oh, okay. Yeah, but she is a badass. Like I don't even know if she has to act. Like I think she's just a badass Aries. But yeah, she always kind of plays it. And again, we've seen that role, and it's a great role to be seen. But this one is still, she's kind of has this like empathy in the middle.
Yeah. Jennifer Connelly amazing.
That's
character.
another one.
I mean, she
could take care of business for sure.
She's been in a lot of movies that have a lot of occult symbolism, and so she does a great job of playing Seven. There's no coincidence on why she was chosen to be the character.
And again, number 9, and then again number 5. Who is that? That's the guy from
John C. Reilly.
Yeah, like I mean, for him to be
John
kind
C.
of
Reilly, man.
they like literally pulled the right archetypes to kind of express that, because they just kind of like naturally did it, and again, like John C. Reilly is definitely playing like a weaker individual than he probably is in life, but does a great job expressing that.
He does,
man.
And Christopher Plummer plays one.
Oh, and that's perfect.
Yeah.
Yep.
If you don't know who Christopher Plummer, and obviously you can like look up these actors if you don't know of them, but Christopher Plummer's been in cinema for like more than 50 years or something like that. Mm-hmm. So like, they did a great job of bringing in an ancient approach, not ancient by his age, but just like another era he comes from into this movie, which again, hats off to him for just, understanding and, what role he's playing. But so now we move into the very specific scene, the scene of, I know in the beginning, what we talked about is when 9 takes the first fall and starts becoming aware of his surroundings, aware that he has mobility, and aware that he is in a new world. He finds a sort of like this little relic, this little piece that is going to be important throughout the whole movie. And this piece, which has 3 symbols on it, it's probably about the size of a penny. He's been carrying around within him inside, and now he has it exposed, and I think it falls, and then the beast, when it takes the
initially, yeah.
So once they're now back into the layer of the beast, and they've been saved by 7, they find that same piece, that jewel looking the pearl, and he picks it up. Again, you notice that 9 is still sort of unfolding and sort of like developing his sense of the world and his surroundings, but in this moment, in that vulnerable state, not knowing what he's doing, he picks up that piece, and that piece is what literally brings the life back to the main machine that is the original machine that was created by the scientist. So remember, the scientist has created something here, which you can obviously get into in a few moments, but he's created this ability to bring inanimate objects to life through the science of basically projecting his soul into these inanimate objects. And the inanimate objects are not just the dolls, but also the machines. And through this piece, this pearl-like device, 9 picks it up and places it right into a space that it seems to fit just perfect, which again now brings the main machine, the cause of all the demise of humanity, back to life. And in that moment, 7 and the rest of the group look at 9 kind of in disbelief by saying, like, what have you done? Why did you just do that? And 9 immediately just sort of looks like, there's repentment in his face, or there's sort of regret of like, oh my gosh, what have I done? So that's kind of where the movie sort of takes a turn there, because the machine goes back into motion, and the factory that makes more machines in the image of the machine also start to move back into motion. At that point, they retreat back to whatever layer they go to hide.
Library.
And before the library, they go back to the church. And in the church, they don't go back to the church.
No, I think they go to the library, and then they go back to the church because they have to find what 6 has been drawing.
Oh, that's
6
right.
Is the Pisces.
That's right. Well, they find out that the symbols on this pearl, right, is what 6 has been drawing.
Yes.
But they don't know what any of this means. And so 7 leads them to the library to meet 3 and 4, which are the archivists and the historians that will teach 9 and the rest of the group what happened in the past and what may be happening in their present moment. And then they go back to the church, which is where 1 confronts them and says, look, all your curiosity has gotten you nowhere. You know what I mean?
It awoke the beast.
It woke the beast. And so now you've made things from bad to worse, which again, this is the time where one takes a chance to say, I was right all along. This is the proof of your buffoonery or the way you're going about life without any kind of proper structure and direction has led us to more demise. But 9 still knows something isn't right, and he knows that 1 knows something and he's hiding something, and he knows most of this information that they're just learning about in the library. So I think, again, I don't want to go too fast, but that's kind of how it all sort of unfolds pretty quickly after the machine comes back to motion.
Yeah, and the machine too, when it comes back to motion, we see the sacrifice of 2 because 2 pushes 9 out. So again, we have the nurturing mother. And at this aspect, it doesn't just kill it, it like takes the soul of 2, which is going to be really important because that's going to be the fuel that kind of powers this machine, is taking souls. So again, deep aspects about how our connection with technology. And again, there's a deep esoteric allegory there, but there's also a deep, exoteric of like, what happens when we give our souls to these machines? And so we have that whole aspect. And then, yeah, you're right. They retreat back to the library, which is, again, very significant because this is the aspect of returning to knowledge to have answers. Rather than returning to this fear-based exoteric religion, they go to the place of knowledge. And you're right. We meet 3 and 4 who are the keepers of the knowledge. And they give a good breakdown of what happens. But most importantly, that the movie, if there's any doubt that this is an alchemical text, shows it to your face because they open a book from Paracelsus. Yep. And that's who the whole thing is based on. So it's all based off of Paracelsus. It's all based off of this alchemical philosophy. Paracelsus is always kind of alluded to as one of the most accomplished alchemists.
Right.
So here we have the story kind of be in place forward. And the object is what's going to happen is because 9 kind of draws the object and 3 and 4 have no record of this in their history. Like they look at each other and they're like, we don't know what that is. And that's when 5 is like, no, that's what 6 draws. And so we make that journey back into the beast, which is a different beast, but we go back to now the old world, which is like the church. And they get caught looking for 6's drawings. And 6 is going to be the last character we meet. And it's almost like that transcendental, if in astrology, I would say this is like the 12th house kind of representation of Pisces, like almost in between the worlds.
He's the artist.
The artist as well. Yeah. But he's also got this like deep connection to like, everything's in source. And like, even when, after this like fight, he goes to catch paper in his hand and it dissolves. And that's the 12th house because it's all about dissolution and the dissolving. And so there's just, again, these really strong aspects, but with them being at the church, we have the beast breaks in, right? And again, you said it perfect. The one is like, you did this. Like, you're the one that went looking for answers. And how important is that when we first encounter this esoteric information, how we could use it negatively to not only affect ourselves or our environment? With great power comes great responsibility. And you talked about it when 9 made that piece fit. There's like this almost like hypnosis over him to like put it there and do that. And again, this shows, what happens when you approach this information, because when you start approaching the esoteric and the occult, there's very big circumstances for your actions because you have a little bit more power of manifesting the material. And so this is what we see. We see the magician get burned a little bit,
right?
Learning his tools. And so we have this aspect where now the sacred feminine has been sucked out of the system by the beast, which you can kind of make your own allegory of today. And then we make our way back to this, we go back to the library, we're at the church, and then there's that attack, and the church burns down in this attack. Now,
well, before the church burns down, they really, again, the whole movie, they're going to lay it on you really, really fast. But there's a moment where the priest has to make a choice between life and everything that he's held on to as far as materialistic, not wealth, but power. And in this moment, to give a quick breakdown, the beast has a hold of the priest. I'll just call him a priest, but we'll call it number 1, the priest. and he has his cape, and the cape is buckled by jewelry, if you will, materialistic again, power, and he literally won't let go. He's being pulled by nine. Nine says, "Let go of your cape," and the answer that one has for him is, "I can't," and he goes, "No, you have to." And finally, the priest or one unbuckles his cape, which the beast takes with him to his doom. This one, this is another beast. There's multiple of these beasts because
its image,
right. And the beast dies, and in that moment, one just climbs over nine. Doesn't say thank you. Doesn't say anything. He just says, he says something along the lines of like,
"You owe me a cape."
Yeah, he's like, "Yo, yeah." And so that's all he cares about, even though nine just saved his life. And obviously, the world that one has created is slowly but surely just completely falling apart, and that's when the fire ignites, and it's a very telling scene where one looks back over his shoulder at the church, and it is a church, as it just is engulfed by flames,
right?
And so
yeah, and that's great because it's saying these old exoteric institutions are not going to protect you. They are going to dissolve in this as well. And we see that because they retreat to the library, and then that dissolves as well too. So even old knowledge, like it's not a left brain over right brain thing. It's going to be a combination of the two.
Right.
And that's going to be really important. And so we now have this different kind of approach because now the journey to save two has elevated from saving his physical body to saving his soul.
Right.
And the essence of two. And so our hero's journey is really going to get set into motion where nine really kind of starts to take charge of the situation. And because one has kind of lost its cape, he's lost his social role, he's kind of lost his power.
Right.
And so we see this dissolving, and he's even losing his mind because he lost his social role, he lost his identity. So he's like talking to himself more. He's just like in his
questioning
mind.
Things.
And he's still kind of holding true to what his principles are, but we're going to see even that dissolve by the end. And that's what's going to be kind of one of the most beautiful things is his transformation, even though it might not be in the physical. But yeah, so we kind of go on this journey, and just to kind of fast forward it, and I think we'll probably make almost like a scene by scene. We should do like a little patron video for this because it'd be great because there's so much symbolism just in every scene. Every scene. So maybe we'll take it kind of scene by scene a little bit deeper on the patron. But they kind of go on this journey, and they use innovation, and they make like this great trap for the situation. They decide that they're going to go after the beast, and they defeat it. But then it rises back up. Like they defeat it, and you think it's the end of the movie. You hear somewhere.
Well, they finally take seven. Seven is taken by the beast.
That's right.
And now all of them have to go back and try to get seven.
Right. Yeah. Which is again saving the sacred feminine. This is a different representation of the feminine, but it's the same thing. Right. And so seven's kind of taken, and we have this whole scene where they kind of save it, and we think they destroy the beast. Somewhere over the rainbow is playing, which is that allusion again to the esoteric. And it's just this really beautiful scene. And then it reemerges, and what happens, this is, again, it's all about that shadow work. What happens when you don't actually go to the causality of the problem and you just take off the surface? Well, it just reinvents itself. It recreates itself, and it reappears. And so we kind of have this, we think is the final battle in the falling action, but it wasn't. It was like this, this prelude. And so we have, the hero has to do something much more, right? And really kind of, and again, it's that piece that comes back together.
Well, they show that scene where one, once again, to gain control, one says, no, see, we haven't killed the beast, but now we have a chance to kill the beast, which is where six finally, and six says very little throughout the movie. It doesn't have to, but in that scene, six says, no, you can't destroy it because the beast actually has the souls of those who that have perished before us. So just to kill the machine is to also let the souls go with the machine. So they have to find another way in order to retrieve the souls out of the machine.
Yes.
And there's a battle one more time between 9 and 1 because 1's saying, no, like enough is enough. Like we're here. It's a vulnerable state. The machine has gotten its, whatever wounds. but 9 still knows, like, no, this can't be, like, you're saying this, which I really like, but 9's saying you can't just finish this off on the physical. It has to be done properly, and it has to be done the way it was meant to be done. And that's where 6, sort of intervenes.
Right.
And then it goes on. Sorry.
Yeah. And you know what I thought too? We talked about 6, but one thing too that 6 says through the whole time, and 9 does this journey in between, is he tells him to go back to the source. And I forget that 9 does go back to the source, and he like sees it, and he kind of sees the aspect that they are in the image of the scientist,
right?
And made in the sacrifice of the Father for the Son. All the aspects, everything's coming back. But yeah, 6 again, which is the transcendental, like that 12th house, I kind of saw it as, always mentions just go back to the source. You have to go to the source. Mm-hmm. And where do we have to go for our completion of this story and to really rise up and be that hero?
Yeah, where we took our first fall.
Where we took our first fall.
Yeah, he goes back there.
Yeah, redoes that relationship. And so we have this inversion of that peace that he had the whole time. Right, because he carried that in from the very beginning after his fall. He didn't understand what it was, but he carried it. It fell out. The beast took it, but he's retrieved it, and now he started a monster with that. But what he's going to do at the end is he's going to invert that, and everything is going to go back to everything's going to start progressing, and this transition period is going to shift. The beast goes away, the souls all are free, and we actually see new life arriving through the rain, right? And it's just like this beautiful connection at the end. But, and again, there's that symbolism of the rain. And like, even in the movie V for Vendetta, when Natalie Portman's like, God is in the rain, and she like sees it. And it's like this really, really powerful scene. That's exactly what we're going to kind of see in this aspect, and the aspect that we all come from the water, and the water is kind of the birth. So we have the return of the mother, right? That feminine energy fallen from the divine, which is the finer substances. And we have this beautiful thing where he even does like a ritual with the 5.
The pentagram.
5, the 5-pointed star. But not everybody made it.
Yeah.
And I think that's really important.
Well, you got to know one scene that's very crucial is there's a moment where the priest has his
yes.
He basically saves himself by understanding. He says there's a scene where 9 is vulnerable at the moment where he's going to sacrifice his own soul to retrieve the souls that have been pulled by the beast. And in that moment, the priest or one says, one must sacrifice himself for the greater of all. And he jumps in front of 9 and takes his own soul and lets his soul actually be taken by the beast, which gives 9 a chance to retrieve this jewel, this symbol you're talking about, and pulls it off the beast, and then the beast literally now is done,
collapses.
Yeah. And so that's a very, very big moment where the old finally succumbs to the new.
Exactly.
And says, you know what, there's something greater going on here, and if I really believed anything I ever stood for, this is the moment where I must really show up. And one finally does show up and says, you know what, like, above all the power, above all the materialistic power that I've had, this is the moment. And that's how he gets his soul. And that's how his soul is able to climb to the heavens above, as well as everybody else's soul. And the souls that go up and beyond and above the world are what bring life back to the planet. Right.
This evolution. And we have these new participants of the new world,
right?
And again, the order, structural institutions doesn't really survive. 2 is kind of this infinite connection that we're going to kind of grow, but that doesn't physically make it. And then 3 and 4, which are kind of the history, they are a part of it.
Right.
They're going to survive. 5 does not because of the fear. 6 does not. Then 7 and 9. And it really was kind of showing the energies that are going to, and again, it's all a collection of all of them.
Yeah, it's all one of the scientists.
Right, it's all of the scientists, right? But they're saying this is what's going to be so important to survive this transition.
Absolutely, man.
So,
beautiful movie.
Beautiful movie. And, we have, unfortunately, we have 2 things. Eduardo has a plane to catch.
I do.
And we have some alchemical counseling, but I think we're definitely going to tap into this on Patreon and maybe go scene by scene, because it would be a great little breakdown. But again, if you guys have never seen this movie, I know you could rent it on Amazon. I think if you sign up for Stars for a free trial, it's on there right now. So if you want to do it on the cheap, just don't forget to cancel it if you're trying to do it on the cheap. But either way, it's always such an amazing aspect to be able to open our day with you guys today.
So good, man.
Good morning. Right?
Good morning.
And the light bearer and everything, the whole aspect of that story. And again, a huge thank you to all the support and everybody who's been sharing the podcast. It means the world to Eddie and I.
Yes, it does. Yes, it does. Yeah, we grow the network little by little. And as you know, going out through this movie and this breakdown, that individuals like the director of this movie and many of the actors involved, there are more of us out there than I think we really know.
Right.
And so, we carry that light together.
Yep, absolutely. Absolutely.
Anything else?
I think until next time.
Until next time, then.